If you visit the British Museum on any given day, you might stumble upon the bronze head of Emperor Augustus. Its regal features, sharp gaze, and imposing aura make it seem like any other artifact celebrating Rome's grandeur. But this is no ordinary relic of the past. Its story is one of defiance, resilience, and the will to resist imperial power. Unlike most Roman artifacts, this head was not unearthed in Rome, the Italian peninsula, or even within the confines of the vast Roman Empire. Instead, it was discovered buried beneath the steps of a temple in Meroë, the ancient capital of the Kingdom of Kush, located in modern-day Sudan. And why was it buried? To the Kushites, this wasn't just as spoils of war, it was a powerful statement. The head was deliberately placed where every temple-goer, every worshipper, would tread upon it, a symbolic act of resistance against the Roman Emperor, Augustus himself. It stood as a daily reminder that even the mightiest empire could be humbled by a resolute people and their indomitable queen, Amanirenas. The Roman Emperor Augustus sat on his gilded throne, the weight of the world's largest empire upon his shoulders. Before him, emissaries from the Kingdom of Kush presented a peculiar gift, a bundle of golden arrows. Their message was as sharp as the weapons they offered. If you want peace, these arrows symbolize our goodwill. If you want war, you will need them. This audacious declaration came from Kandake Amanirenas, the one-eyed warrior queen of Kush. Known for her resilience and strategic brilliance, she was a ruler unlike any Augustus had ever faced. Her words were not a mere warning, they were a battle cry. The bronze head of Augustus Caesar, severed and buried beneath the steps of a Kushite temple, bore silent witness to an extraordinary story. It was more than a trophy of war, it was a message, a bold, defiant declaration from a queen whose name was etched into the annals of resistance. Queen Amanirenas, the one-eyed Kandake of Kush, had stared down the mightiest empire of her time and sent it reeling. Her people, armed with bows and an indomitable spirit, dared to challenge Rome when it seemed no one else could. Picture this, the year is 25 BCE. The Roman Empire, led by Emperor Augustus, stretches its dominion across continents. Its legions are undefeated, its ambitions insatiable. Having recently annexed Egypt and defeated Cleopatra and Mark Antony, Augustus now turns his gaze southward toward the golden lands of Nubia and the powerful kingdom of Kush. He sees its treasures, gold, ivory, and iron, and dreams of adding them to Rome's coffers. But in the heart of Nubia, a queen rises. Amanirenas is no ordinary ruler. She is a Kandake, a title that commands reverence and embodies the strength of the Kushite people. Known for her strategic brilliance and unparalleled courage, she leads her people in both peace and war. At her side, her son, Prince Akinidad, shares her unyielding resolve to protect their land from foreign domination. The clash between Kush and Rome was inevitable, a collision of two worlds, each unyielding in its vision of power. But as the golden arrows sent to Augustus proclaimed, the Kandake was not one to be underestimated. "If you seek peace, these are a token of our friendship," her emissaries said. "If you seek war, you will need them." What unfolds next is a story of defiance, sacrifice, and triumph. A tale where strategy outwits brute strength, where loss ignites resilience, and where a queen who loses an eye on the battlefield sees her kingdom's freedom more clearly than ever. This is the story of Amanirenas, the queen who stood tall against an empire, the woman who defied Caesar himself, and the leader who ensured her people would not bow to the yoke of Roman rule. And in the ruins of Meroë, the head of Augustus, trampled daily by Kushites as they entered their temple, remains a silent testament to a queen who understood the art of defiance. She did not just defeat Rome in battle, she defeated its hubris, turning the emperor himself into a symbol of her people's unyielding strength. And so, our journey begins. Are you ready to tread the sands of ancient Nubia, to hear the clash of swords and the roar of war elephants, and to witness the indomitable spirit of a queen who changed the course of history? Stay with me, for this tale will take you to the heights of triumph and the depths of sacrifice. The Kandake awaits. In 30 BCE, the world trembled as Augustus Caesar emerged victorious at the Battle of Actium. With the defeat of Cleopatra and Mark Antony, the once mighty Egyptian kingdom fell under Roman control, becoming the jewel of Augustus's burgeoning empire. But the story did not end there. Augustus, ever the strategist, cast his ambitions further south toward the land of Kush, a kingdom both alluring and defiant. Kush was no mere footnote in history. It was a land of grandeur, nestled between the Nile and the Atbara River, where the earth glittered with gold and the clang of iron echoed in workshops. Known as the land of the bow, Kush's people were master archers, their skill so legendary that even their enemies marveled at their precision. Its capital, Meroë, was a beacon of culture and innovation, its skyline pierced by the pointed spires of pyramids and the grandeur of temples dedicated to gods who smiled on their resilient people. This was no ordinary kingdom. It was a realm forged in the crucible of defiance. But as much as the land was rich, it was also vulnerable. The Romans, fresh from their triumph in Egypt, set their sights on this glittering kingdom. To Augustus, Kush was not just a distant territory, it was a treasure chest waiting to be opened, its wealth destined for the coffers of Rome. Yet he underestimated one thing: Kush's legacy of resilience and its long tradition of formidable female rulers, the Kandakas. The Kandakas were more than queens. They were warriors, guardians, and symbols of their people's strength. To the Romans, who were unaccustomed to such powerful women, the Kandakas seemed almost mythical, and among these, Amanirenas shone the brightest. Rising to power after the death of her husband, King Teritechus, in 25 BCE, she was no stranger to leadership. With her son, Prince Akinidad, at her side, she embraced her role with a blend of maternal care and unyielding determination. But this was no time for quiet rule. Rome had begun pressing its boundaries, creeping into Kushite territories. The imposition of heavy taxes on Nubian lands was not just an economic burden, it was a slap in the face to Kush's sovereignty. Roman prefects in Egypt treated the borderlands as Rome's by right, their arrogance infuriating the proud Kushites. Amanirenas saw the encroachment for what it was, a prelude to domination. And Rome? It was at the height of its power. Augustus Caesar's legions were unmatched, a disciplined force that had steamrolled kingdoms far mightier than Kush. The Roman military was a machine, with its siege engines, formations, and unyielding structure. Yet even in its might, Rome had a blind spot. It underestimated the resolve of those who refused to kneel. Kush, after all, was no stranger to resistance. For centuries, it had weathered invasions, from the armies of the pharaohs to the might of the Assyrians. Its people were shaped by these trials, their culture steeped in resilience. The spirit of their ancestors, who had once ruled Egypt as the 25th dynasty, burned brightly in their hearts. To Amanirenas, the looming threat of Rome was not a reason to falter, but a call to rise. The capital of Meroë was a testament to Kush's defiance and ingenuity. Unlike the lush floodplains of Lower Egypt, Meroë thrived in the savannah, its agriculture fueled by seasonal rains and innovative irrigation techniques. Its artisans were masters of ironwork, its merchants navigators of vast trade networks that stretched to the Red Sea and beyond. The city's temples stood as monuments to gods who celebrated both war and peace. To lose this kingdom to Rome would be to lose a legacy. Amanirenas knew what was at stake. She also knew what she was up against. Augustus Caesar, hailed as the son of God by his people, was a master of strategy and propaganda. His soldiers were battle-hardened, their banners carried across continents. But Amanirenas had something Rome could never grasp: the unity of a people fighting for their homeland, their identity, their freedom. She understood that war was not only about armies, it was about will. As Rome's ambitions grew bolder, Amanirenas began to prepare. She summoned her people, rallying an army of 30,000 warriors. The fields of Kush became training grounds where men and women honed their archery, tested their swords, and learned the art of guerrilla warfare. Every soldier understood the stakes. Every arrow they crafted was a message. Kush would not bow. Yet Amanirenas was not content with mere preparation. She understood the importance of morale. She spoke to her people not just as their queen, but as their mother, protector, and guide. Her speeches echoed through the valleys. Rome may be mighty, but our spirit is mightier. We fight not for conquest, but for what is ours, and in this we cannot fail. The stage was set. On one side, Rome, a colossus whose ambitions knew no bounds. On the other, Kush, a kingdom of resilience, led by a queen who had everything to lose but would not falter. The clash was inevitable. But while Rome planned to subjugate, Amanirenas was ready to resist, to strike, and to remind the world that even the mightiest empire could be brought to its knees. The world held its breath. The riverbanks of the Nile, once silent witnesses to the flow of life, would soon bear the cries of war. And Amanirenas? She stood tall, her gaze fixed not on the looming threat, but on the freedom she swore to protect. In 25 BCE, Amanirenas made a decision that left even the mighty Romans reeling. She knew the empire's gaze was elsewhere, with legions tied up in distant campaigns in Arabia. This was her moment, her chance to strike while the formidable Roman army was distracted. With the element of surprise as her greatest weapon, she launched a daring raid into Roman-occupied Egypt. Her forces, an unstoppable tide of 30,000 warriors, descended on Syene, Philae, and Elephantine. The Romans, caught off guard, scrambled to defend their positions, but were overwhelmed by the ferocity of the Kushite assault. The air was thick with the hum of arrows and the clash of swords. Kushite warriors, famed for their deadly precision, outmaneuvered the Roman garrisons. "Leave no statue unbroken," Amanirenas ordered, her voice ringing above the chaos. The Kushites obeyed with zeal. The mighty likenesses of Augustus, meant to inspire awe and submission, were defaced, their imperial splendor shattered. One bronze head, its eyes glaring defiantly even in defeat, was carried triumphantly back to Meroë. There, in an act of profound symbolism, it was buried beneath the temple steps. Every worshipper who entered trampled upon the Roman emperor's visage, a daily reminder of Kush's victory and defiance. But with triumph came uncertainty. Amanirenas knew the Romans would not let this insult go unanswered. "We've struck a blow," she told her council that night, her eye blazing with determination. "But we've also awakened a beast." Rome's response was swift and brutal. Augustus Caesar, infuriated by the humiliation, dispatched Gaius Petronius, the governor of Egypt, to restore order and exact retribution. Petronius was no stranger to war. He was cunning, calculating, and unrelenting. With 10,000 infantry and 800 cavalry at his command, he marched south into Kushite territory, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. Napata, a city of great cultural and spiritual significance to Kush, bore the brunt of Roman fury. The invaders stormed the city, burning its temples and capturing thousands of its people to be sold into slavery. Smoke filled the air as Napata's once proud skyline crumbled under Roman siege engines. It was a calculated act meant to crush Kushite morale. But Amanirenas was not easily broken. While the flames devoured Napata, she withdrew her forces strategically, retreating to higher ground and conserving her strength. "Let them think they've won," she said to her generals. "We are not running, we are waiting." At Primis, modern Casa Ibrim, the tides turned once more. Amanirenas, ever the tactician, chose this fortified city as the site of her counterattack. The Romans, emboldened by their recent victories, believed the Kushites to be on the verge of collapse. They were wrong. As dawn broke, the air filled with the twang of bowstrings. Kushite archers, perched high on the cliffs, unleashed a storm of arrows. The Romans, disciplined as ever, raised their shields in tight formations, but the sheer volume of the attack caused chaos in their ranks. Amanirenas herself led the charge, her war cry echoing across the battlefield. But then came the turn. The Romans, with their superior weaponry and relentless discipline, rallied. Their ballistae fired massive bolts that tore through the Kushite lines. The ground became a churning mass of mud and blood as the two sides clashed in close combat. In the midst of the melee, Amanirenas was struck by a Roman spear. It pierced her left eye and she fell to her knees. Her warriors gasped, but she refused to let them see her falter. Rising to her feet, blood streaming down her face, she roared, "Fight! For Kush! For freedom!" Her injury, far from demoralizing her troops, became a rallying point. They fought harder, even as they were forced to retreat. Wounded but unbowed, Amanirenas regrouped her forces at Kandake, where a Roman stronghold had become a thorn in Kush's side. Despite her injury, she took to the battlefield, her presence inspiring her warriors. The siege of Kandake began, a grueling test of endurance for both sides. For weeks, the Kushites battered the Roman defenses, using everything at their disposal: arrows, battering rams, and even fiery projectiles. The Romans, entrenched and desperate, fought back with equal ferocity. Every day was a bloody stalemate, and every night the wounded were carried off, their cries echoing into the darkness. It was during one of these battles that Amanirenas suffered her greatest personal loss. Her son, Prince Akinidad, fell in combat. A Roman javelin found its mark, and the prince, the pride of Kush, crumpled to the ground. Amanirenas rushed to his side, cradling him as life slipped away. "Mother," he whispered, "fight on." His death broke her heart, but steeled her resolve. "The Romans have taken much," she told her warriors that night, her voice hoarse with grief. "But they will not take our spirit." By 22 BCE, the war had dragged on, and exhaustion gripped both sides. The Romans, having fortified their position at Maharaka, hoped to hold the line and force the Kushites into submission. But Amanirenas was relentless. Time and again her forces attacked, testing the Roman defenses and making it clear that Kush would never yield. Petronius, weary of the constant assaults, realized the futility of further conflict. Kushite resolve was unbreakable, and the cost of maintaining the war far outweighed any potential gains. Rome, the great empire that had conquered so much of the known world, found itself at an impasse with a single queen and her resilient people. As negotiations began, Amanirenas made her position clear. Kush would not be a vassal. There would be no tribute, no subjugation. Her terms were simple: respect Kush's sovereignty or prepare for an eternal war. Rome listened. For the first time, the empire that prided itself on conquest agreed to terms dictated by an African queen. The Treaty of Samos marked the end of hostilities, with Kush retaining its independence and forcing Rome to abandon its territorial ambitions south of Egypt. Amanirenas, the one-eyed queen, returned to Meroë victorious. Though battered and scarred, she had not only defended her kingdom, but also left a legacy of defiance that would echo through the ages. The year 21 BCE marked a dramatic shift in the tides of history, a moment when courage and persistence forced an empire to bend. The Treaty of Samos was not just a document, it was a triumph carved out of unyielding resistance. Amanirenas, battered yet unbroken, played her hand with the skill of a master strategist. Her decision to send emissaries to Augustus Caesar himself was bold, almost provocative. The envoys arrived at the Roman camp not as submissive diplomats, but as proud representatives of a queen who had taken her stand. They carried with them an audacious message, one that resounded with both defiance and clarity. "The Kandaka of Kush sends her regards," the emissaries declared. "We offer peace, but it must be a just peace. Kush will bow to no man, not even Caesar." This was no mere negotiation. It was a game of wills. The Romans, exhausted by years of relentless conflict and astounded by the resilience of their adversaries, were forced to reconsider. Petronius had reported back to Augustus, detailing the ferocity of the Kushite warriors and the futility of continued warfare in a land so vast and unforgiving. The cost of conquering Kush was far greater than the potential rewards. Augustus, pragmatic and calculating, saw the wisdom in compromise. To many Romans, it might have looked like a concession. To Augustus, it was a strategic retreat that allowed the empire to focus on other fronts. And so, the treaty was struck. Under the Treaty of Samos, Rome agreed to withdraw its forces to the First Cataract, relinquishing any claims on Kushite territory. Even more astonishingly, the taxes imposed on Nubian lands were cancelled entirely. For an empire accustomed to taking, not giving, this was a remarkable moment. The terms favoured Kush not because of luck, but because of Amanirenas' tenacity. She had turned what many considered an inevitable Roman conquest into a testament of resistance. As the Roman legions retreated, the borders of Kush remained untouched, its sovereignty intact. Back in Meroë, the triumph was celebrated with ceremonies and offerings to the gods. The bronze head of Augustus, buried beneath the temple steps, took on an even greater significance. It was not just a trophy, it was a symbol. Every day, as priests and worshippers stepped over it, they were reminded of the Kandaka's victory. Each step was an affirmation. Kush will not be subdued. Amanirenas herself walked those temple steps, her one good eye scanning the horizon. "Let the world see what we have done," she said to her closest advisors. "This is not just our story, this is our legacy." But this victory was not just about military might or diplomacy. It was about a queen who refused to bow, a people who refused to break, and a kingdom that refused to fade into history as another conquest. Amanirenas had secured more than a treaty. She had carved a place for Kush among the great powers of its time. The Treaty of Samos was the culmination of years of bloodshed and sacrifice, but it was also the beginning of something more profound. It was a moment when an empire learned that some lands, some people, and some leaders could not be conquered. And it was a moment when a queen proved that resilience, courage, and strategy could defy even the mightiest of foes. In the heart of Meroë, amid the pyramids and temples, Amanirenas stood as a living symbol of what it meant to lead, not through fear, but through unyielding determination. And though Rome's banners still flew high, their retreat from Kush was a silent acknowledgement that even Augustus Caesar had met his match. Queen Amanirenas was more than just a ruler. She was a force of nature. Her leadership was as fierce as the desert winds and as steady as the Nile's flow. To her people, she was a savior. To her enemies, she was an enigma, a queen who refused to yield, a warrior who defied the odds, and a diplomat who turned the tables on an empire. It is said that history is written by the victors, but Amanirenas rewrote that rule. She stood against Rome, the mightiest empire of her time, and emerged with her kingdom's sovereignty intact. This wasn't just a political victory, it was a triumph of spirit and identity. Amanirenas reminded the world that no power, no matter how vast, could extinguish the fire of a people determined to remain free. Imagine this. Each step taken on the bronze head of Augustus, buried beneath the temple at Meroë, echoed with defiance. Every worshipper, every warrior, every child who walked those steps unknowingly trampled on the symbol of imperial domination. It wasn't just a trophy of war, it was a daily reminder of what they had fought for: freedom, dignity, sovereignty. And what of the golden arrows? Sent as both a challenge and an invitation, they were Amanirenas' ultimate statement: peace, if you will, war, if you must. Those arrows, never fired in submission, became a timeless metaphor for her resolve. They still gleam in the annals of history, a reminder of what it means to stand tall in the face of overwhelming odds. Amanirenas did not just fight battles, she won the war of memory. Her story lives on, whispered by the winds that sweep through the ruins of Meroë, etched in the hearts of those who see her as a symbol of resilience and strength. The one-eyed Kandake, scarred by war but unbroken in spirit, remains an icon of African independence and defiance, and yet her story is not as well known as it should be. While other queens and empires dominate the pages of history books, Amanirenas' name often lingers in the shadows, waiting to be rediscovered. But isn't that fitting? She was never one to seek glory. She let her actions speak for themselves. Still, her tale demands to be told, her courage celebrated, her lessons remembered. What would Amanirenas say if she could see us now? Would she marvel at how far the world has come, or would she shake her head at how often freedom is still contested? Her story challenges us to ask ourselves, what would I do in the face of impossible odds? Would I stand as she did, unwavering and bold? In the end, Queen Amanirenas' legacy is not just about a queen who fought a war. It's about a people who refused to kneel, a culture that thrived despite the shadow of an empire, and a leader who understood that freedom is the most precious treasure of all. The sands of Kush may have shifted, and the great temples may have crumbled, but her spirit endures, a beacon for those who dare to challenge the impossible. So, let her name be spoken, her story retold, her courage remembered. For Queen Amanirenas is not just a figure of the past. She is a reminder that the fight for justice, sovereignty and dignity is timeless. She is, and always will be, the Kandake who stood unbowed against the greatest empire of her age. If you enjoyed this journey, show your support by liking the video. It helps us bring more captivating stories to you. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an adventure into the past. We'd also love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Is there a specific historical event or epic tale you'd like us to explore next? Or is there any part of the video, the narrative, the style, or anything else you think we could improve? Your feedback helps us grow.